What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today when I talk to you about Lucid, I want to go over some of the current data points, what shorts are up to, and then aside from that though, what it will really take for Lucid to move higher. Before we get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So Lucid right now is down 2.66%, 255 the low, 263 the high, kind of low volume. So the market's been open 1 hour, 9.9 million for volume, 36.4 is the average. Not really seeing that much institutional transactions. So one transaction, which was a buy, it was for 105,000, but still big money isn't really buying the Lucid dip. No actual news from Lucid, no SEC filing, so it's kind of just stuck in limbo. A lot of entities are just waiting for Lucid to unveil their earnings, which is coming up on November the 7th. And plus Tesla unveiling their earnings after hours on Wednesday. I think that could be a big kind of moving point for Lucid. But like I said, I think everyone's just waiting to hear those sweet nothings from Peter associated to the Gravity. Shorts today are increasing 840,000 shares, and the new short interest percentage is 21.31%. I'm sure that will throw off a lot of individuals. I'll talk on that in a second, but currently 253.97 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow average is 7.44, so a little bit lower. So supply and demand, so a little bit more of an increase in that. And then utilization is 94.37. So the reason why it did go down from roughly 30% short interest to 21.3 is because of the recent dilution. Because keep in mind, all of this is just formulas, right? So if you increase the amount of shares that's in the float, then of course the percentage goes down. So we'll just have to wait and see for the next NASDAQ report, which should be coming out probably in the next around 3 days. So we'll be able to see how many shares were being shorted basically by the midpoint of October. So not the best and most up-to-date information, but it is what it is. So yeah, that's why it did go down. So we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, aside from that though, shorts are still increasing roughly 840,000 shares. So they're kind of doubling down, increasing the volume. And like I said, with the total volume being around 9 mil for that, and shorts making up roughly about 10-15% of that, that's why of course you have that little bit of a suppression. But all in all, I'll go over technicals and stuff like that, then I'll go over kind of the future projections. But moving over to IBKR, I do have the ALMA 50, 100, 200-day moving averages, as well as the super trend. Pretty much on everything it is bearish, everything. So this is why if you are investing in Lucid at this stage in the game, as I kind of stated on Saturday, I did buy a little bit, but I'm comfortable with a lot of volatility, especially in Lucid's case. And yeah, so you guys have to just be comfortable with continued volatility, because MACD just very bearish. It's below all the key pivotal moving averages, below the ALMA. Even looking at stochastic RSI, you see a bearish deviation, but the only positive out of any of this is the fact that it is very, very oversold. So if there's a good piece of news, aka the Gravity, and the data all lines up with what the market was really wanting, then yeah, you could see a push higher. So we'll just have to wait and see, but no new analyst ratings, nothing along those lines to kind of talk on. But aside from that, with the options, 103,000 in calls, 137,000 in puts, and of the call options that are being purchased, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $3 range, and then the puts more so anticipated for it to be sub $2.50. There was actually even 1,000 purchased this morning at that $2.50 strike price for the November 22nd, 2024 expiry date, which is 32 days away. So that's encumbering their earnings. So all in all, not the most optimistic, but needless to say, let's go over this right here. So 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗘𝗖𝗧, I really like his kind of analysis and his viewpoint on Lucid. So if you guys don't have or follow him on Twitter or X, make sure you guys do that. But he kind of talked on these numbers, expectations all the way up till 2030. So you can see production numbers, what that represents for growth percentage year over year. So 2025, 13.5 is the kind of estimate for production. 2026, 18.3. 25.7 and all the way up to 98. And just to put it in perspective, this is what Lucid did originally forecast in 2021. So 2026, they were projecting 251,000, and then 2025, 135,000, 90,000, 49,000. So very, very different. But in reality, I think this is a little bit more realistic. But what does that mean for kind of efficiency, for it kind of hitting the productive mark and everything? So essentially, if we kind of take this into consideration, like, I think that is going to push back their profitability, because based on everything Peter has stated time and time again, tail end of 2026, once that midsize SUV does come out, that is where it will kind of move to profitability. So if you kind of just take that into consideration, maybe 2027, 2028, but factoring in these numbers. So let's say 41,000, right? And I know as it stands, you can kind of use around 88,000 as a good benchmark for revenue. Of course, that midsize SUV is going to really change the dynamic of that. But as it stands, let's say these production numbers do come into play. Quickly going over to Lucid's financials. So generally, you can kind of see that, and I'm looking at the annual rate. So in 2023, they burnt through roughly around 2.4 billion just from operations, assuming that is going to be significantly higher, because as you can kind of see, 2022, 2023 went from 2.2 to 2.4. So most likely this will be probably around 2.9-ish for the actual cash from operations, how much is burning through. So if you factor it in, let's say you need to make at least 3 billion just to offset just that, then most likely you're sitting at around 60,000 for production. So ultimately landing it in 2029 for once it kind of moves to profitability. That's assuming everything goes according to plan. And once again, you might think that these numbers are rather low as well, because Peter did state that he wants at least 1 million for production of those midsize SUVs. So we'll just have to wait and see, but in my opinion, I think that these numbers are fairly realistic. Good double-digit growth. Will it be what Wall Street does anticipate? That's kind of yet to be seen, but in my opinion, you need at least 60,000 just to offset the current actual burn rate. But that's not also factoring in constant dilution. So dilution essentially is going to continue up until they do hit the point of profitability. So I think in reality, a lot of people are always saying, well, Lucid has the best tech. Why is it still going down the stock price? And that's because Wall Street punishes very much any stock that essentially does kind of just relies on dilution too much. So that's kind of how Lucid's at. So once again, like I said, go give Saudi Bay a quick follow, because this type of DD is very good, and I think this is probably the most realistic numbers out there, rather than a lot of other individuals. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on all of that in the comments below. What do you think, for instance, their year of profitability will be? Do you think it'll be that 2029, or do you think it'll be closer to what Peter stated, maybe 2027, 2028? And maybe these numbers are just a little bit lowballing it. What's your viewpoint on all that? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. 2 things I want to share with you. Take advantage of this. It does give you 8 free stocks. Each stock is valued up to $2,000, so that is a kick-ass deal. And then aside from that, though, I did launch memberships. So if you like the Lucid content, want to support the channel, you can definitely do so. Or if you want to buy signals on stocks and options, there's also a tier for that. With all that said, appreciate all you guys watching.